Jack wiped the sweat from his forehead as he leaned against the wooden fence, watching the herd of cattle slowly make their way across the dusty field. The sun hung high in the sky, relentless in its heat, and he felt every bit the stranger he was. Moving to a small town in Texas had seemed like a good idea at first. Fresh air, open fields, hard work, but now, standing there with a lasso in his hands and boots caked in mud, he wasn't so sure. He had grown up in a city where the tallest thing around was a streetlight, and the nearest barn was a long way from his apartment. Ranch life was something entirely different, harsh, demanding, and filled with people who seemed to know exactly what they were doing. Jack, on the other hand, stumbled through tasks, dropping ropes, tripping over stray hooves, and earning a few good-natured laughs from the older ranch hands. It was during one of these moments, while trying to corral a particularly stubborn cow, that he first noticed her. She was tall, strong, and moved with a confidence that made the other ranch hands pause and watch. Sarah. Everyone called her the big cowgirl. Not just because of her height, but because she carried herself with a bold energy, a mixture of charm and authority that seemed to command attention without trying. Jack froze mid-step as she walked toward him, her boots kicking up small clouds of dust. Her hair was tied back in a messy braid, and her sun-tanned face wore a wide, friendly smile. "Need some help there, city boy?" she asked, her voice playful but steady. Jack swallowed nervously. Maybe," he admitted, feeling his cheeks warm. "Maybe?" she repeated, raising an eyebrow. "That's not very confident." He laughed awkwardly. "Guess I'm still figuring this out." She shook her head but didn't step away. Instead, she grabbed a loose rope from his hands and guided it around the cow, showing him exactly how to hold it and throw it. Her movements were natural, almost effortless, and Jack couldn't help but notice how easy she made everything look. "See? Not so hard," she said, stepping back. "Just takes practice." Jack nodded, trying to match her calm, confident energy. He managed to get the cow to follow the direction she pointed, and she clapped him on the back. "Not bad for your first try," she said with a grin. "City boys usually run screaming after the first bump." Jack laughed, a little more relaxed now. "I'm tougher than I look, I guess." She tilted her head and studied him for a moment. "You're different," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Most of the new hands just want to get through the day. You actually try." Jack felt a spark of pride, mixed with embarrassment. Compliments from someone like her weren't easy to take. Over the next few days, Jack found himself crossing paths with Sarah often. She would appear when he least expected, offering tips, encouragement, or playful teasing that made his heart race. The first time she joked about him being all nerves and no experience. He had no idea what she meant. But gradually, it became clear that she was talking about more than just ranch work. It was late one afternoon when the conversation shifted entirely. They had finished rounding up the last of the cattle and were leaning against the fence, watching the sky turn soft shades of pink and orange. The air was warm, and the quiet of the field made everything feel slower, calmer. "You've never had a real kiss, have you?" she asked suddenly, her voice casual but with a hint of curiosity. Jack froze, his hands gripping the fence a little too tightly. What?" "You know," she said, stepping a little closer, closing the distance between them. "A proper kiss. I mean, it's kind of obvious." She laughed lightly, teasing, but there was no judgment in her eyes. Only curiosity, and maybe a little amusement. Jack felt his face turn red. I guess not," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah raised her eyebrows, clearly surprised. "Really? You're a grown man? And you've never?" "I just haven't," he said quickly, looking anywhere but her face. He wasn't used to someone being so direct, especially someone as confident as Sarah. She laughed. A deep, warm sound that made Jack feel both embarrassed and strangely calm. Well, that's kind of cute, actually. Jack glanced up, unsure how to respond. He had never been good at these situations, never known how to handle someone who could see right through him without even trying. Sarah, however, seemed completely at ease, leaning against the fence as if they were old friends. "Don't worry," she said after a moment, sensing his nervousness. "I'm not going to force anything." But, she paused, her eyes twinkling. "It's about time you learned, don't you think?" Jack swallowed hard. His heart was pounding, not just because of what she said, but because of the way she said it. There was no pressure, no malice, just a gentle challenge that made him want to rise to it. I don't know," he admitted. "I've never been in a situation like this." "Then let's start simple," she said, leaning a little closer, so that he could smell the faint scent of her shampoo and the warm earthiness of the ranch. "You don't have to do anything yet. Just pay attention. Watch. Learn." Her closeness was disarming, and Jack realized he could barely think. Every instinct he had screamed at him to step back. Yet another part of him, braver and more curious, urged him to stay. "You're nervous," she said with a knowing smile. Jack laughed nervously. "I do care. I don't want to mess it up." "You won't," she said softly, giving him a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "And if you do, well, we'll just call it practice." For the first time in a long while, Jack felt a spark of courage, not the kind born from arrogance, but from honesty, from the realization that someone as bold and fearless as Sarah, was willing to take a chance on him. They stayed by the fence for a while longer, talking about everything and nothing: ranch work, the town, favorite foods, silly childhood stories. Sarah shared tales of falling off horses, losing cows, and sneaking snacks from the barn. Jack told her about city life, quiet streets, and his love for reading under the dim light of his small apartment. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in gold and pink, Sarah nudged him playfully. "You know," she said, "you might just survive here. After all." Jack smiled, a little more relaxed now. "Maybe. With a teacher like you, anything's possible." She laughed, stepping a bit closer again. "Maybe I should teach you more than just ranch work," she said, her voice dropping just slightly, teasing but soft. "Maybe it's time you learned a thing or two about life outside the city, too." Jack's stomach fluttered. He didn't know exactly what she meant, and he didn't need to. The warmth in her eyes and the gentle closeness of her presence said more than words ever could. As the sky darkened and the first stars appeared, Jack realized something important. This was the beginning of a new chapter in his life. One where he didn't have to hide, where being inexperienced wasn't a flaw, and where someone genuinely cared about helping him grow. And when Sarah looked at him one last time before heading back to her own chores, leaning just close enough that he felt the faint brush of her hand, Jack couldn't help but think, maybe this small town, the dusty fields, and the big cowgirl had just become a place he could belong. He stayed by the fence a little longer, heart racing, mind buzzing, and a quiet smile on his face. For the first time, the idea of learning, growing, and maybe even experiencing something new didn't scare him. It excited him, and deep down, he knew that when she asked again, "You've never had a kiss?" he might finally find the courage to say, yes. The next day, the sun rose bright and warm over the ranch, and Jack felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. He had barely slept, thinking about the previous evening, the playful teasing, the closeness, and the unspoken challenge in Sarah's eyes. He tried to focus on his work, but every time he turned a corner or heard boots on the wooden floor, he imagined her smile and felt a flutter in his chest. The morning chores were harder than usual, not because the work had changed, but because Jack's mind kept drifting to Sarah. He stumbled over ropes, nearly tripped over a bucket, and missed a few calls for the cattle. Every time that happened, he would glance up, hoping to see her, and sure enough, there she was, moving through the barn with the ease of someone born to it. "You're daydreaming again," she said, leaning against the post of the barn door with her arms crossed. Her smile was warm, teasing, and it made Jack's heart skip. "I'm not," he said. She laughed, a bright sound that made the old barn walls feel alive. "Sure you're not. Come on, I'll show you something." Curiosity piqued, Jack followed her to the edge of a quiet field. The sun was higher now, the heat less gentle than the evening before, but there was a soft breeze that made the tall grass sway like gentle waves. Sarah stopped and turned to him. "Relax," she said, her voice soft but confident. "I want to show you something about trusting yourself." Jack blinked, unsure what she meant, but he nodded. She walked a few steps ahead, then turned to face him. "See this?" she said, pointing to a small wooden fence that separated the field from a narrow creek. "You're going to walk across it." Jack's eyes widened. "Across? That?" The fence was old but sturdy, maybe a foot high. Still, he had never been very confident with heights or balance, and the thought of falling into the creek made his stomach twist. "Don't overthink it," Sarah said, stepping onto the fence with ease. "Just focus on one step at a time." Jack hesitated, his nerves rising, but then he remembered her words from the evening before, about courage, learning, and stepping outside his comfort zone. Taking a deep breath, he placed one foot on the fence, then the other. His balance wobbled, but he kept going, feeling the rush of accomplishment with every step. Sarah cheered softly from the side. "See? You've got this. Just believe in yourself." When Jack reached the other side, he felt a burst of pride. He looked at Sarah, expecting her to grin. But instead, she was closer than he had realized, her eyes studying him with something more than amusement, something warm and gentle. "You did it," she said quietly, stepping close. "I knew you could." Jack felt his chest tighten, his heart racing. Her confidence in him made him feel taller, stronger, braver. He wanted to say something clever, but all he could manage was a sheepish smile. Sarah tilted her head, her expression softening. "You know," she said, "sometimes the hardest part is just starting. The rest comes easier once you take that first step." Jack nodded, understanding more than just the lesson about balance. He thought about his life in the city, the timid, unsure person he used to be. Here, with her, he felt capable of more than he had imagined. Then she stepped even closer, so that he could see the subtle warmth in her eyes, the gentle tilt of her lips. "And sometimes," she whispered, "the best lessons come from the heart." Jack felt his stomach flip. He realized she was talking about more than just walking across a fence. He looked into her eyes, unsure, nervous, yet drawn to her in a way he couldn't explain. I don't know what to say," he admitted softly. "You don't have to say anything," she replied, smiling. "Just feel it. That's enough for now." They stood there in the quiet field, the wind brushing through the grass, the distant sounds of cattle and birds filling the air. Jack felt a strange mix of excitement and fear, the kind that comes with facing something new and important. His first kiss. He had never imagined it would feel like this, not scary, not rushed, just real and full of possibility. Sarah leaned just slightly closer, giving him a gentle nudge with her shoulder. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice soft but teasing. Jack swallowed hard, his hands gripping the fence behind him. "I think, yes," he said finally, his voice quiet, but certain. She smiled, a little approvingly, and stepped closer until their faces were just inches apart. The warmth of her presence, The gentle scent of the field mixed with the faint smell of her hair made his heart race faster than he thought possible. "Just follow my lead," she said softly. "And don't worry, I'll guide you." Jack nodded, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. He closed his eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and leaned forward. The kiss was gentle, tentative at first. A soft brush of lips that felt new, exciting, and completely honest. Jack froze for a second, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment, but Sarah didn't pull away. Instead, she guided him with a quiet confidence, letting him find the rhythm and comfort he needed. When they finally pulled back, Jack opened his eyes to see her smiling, her eyes sparkling. "Not so bad for a first try," she teased, lightly. Jack laughed nervously, a little red in the face, but feeling a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the sun. "I think I did okay," he said, still trying to catch his breath. "You did more than okay," she said softly. "You were honest, brave, and open. That's what matters." They spent the rest of the afternoon in the field, talking quietly, sharing small stories and laughs. Jack felt a strange sense of connection with Sarah, something he had never experienced before. It wasn't just the kiss, or even the closeness. It was the way she listened, the way she seemed to understand him without judgment, and the way she encouraged him to be better. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange, pink, and gold, Jack realized how much he had grown in just a few days. He wasn't just learning to work on a ranch or learning to navigate life in a small town. He was learning about courage, trust, and opening his heart to new experiences. Sarah nudged him playfully as they walked back toward the barn. "You know," she said, "I think you're going to do just fine here." Jack smiled, feeling a new confidence in himself. "Thanks to you," he said quietly. "Don't thank me yet," she replied with a wink. "There's a lot more to learn." Jack laughed, the sound full of genuine joy. He knew she was right. This was only the beginning, not just of their friendship, or maybe something more, but of his journey. A journey that involved courage, learning, and maybe even love. That night, as Jack lay in his small room in the ranch house, he replayed the day in his mind. The fence, the field, the first kiss. He realized something important. Bravery wasn't about being fearless. It was about stepping forward, even when you were nervous, and trusting that the moment and the people who mattered would guide you. And as he drifted off to sleep, he felt a quiet hope in his heart. A hope that this small town, the ranch, and the big cowgirl who had changed everything would be a part of his life for a long time to come.